Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. That time of week again, MLB Power Rankings. I hope you guys are having a lovely Sunday out there. Week 2 of the NFL, so I'm sure a lot of you guys are watching that too. But let's not forget, the MLB playoffs are right around the corner, and some of these intense playoff races are coming up. So if you want to see me do a daily recap of the playoff races, smash that like button. And if we get to about, let's say, 30 likes within the first day, I'll know there's an appetite for that, and I'll commit to down the rest of the season doing a daily video recap on that. So smash that like button, guys. We're gonna start things off. It's been a kind of interesting week of all around. Honestly, there's a little bit of switches here and there, but overall we got new number 30, Cincinnati Reds. They started the week 0-4 against Pittsburgh. Pretty much cemented it for me when you go 0-4 against the bottom team, and Cincinnati has been pretty much free falling since the trade deadline. Can't really blame them. They put a lot on the deadline there. But they also lost over the weekend against St. Louis. I think it was 1-3. So, yeah, Cincinnati is our new bottom. So that only moves up the Pirates one spot. Like I said, 4-0 against Cincy. But then they took that 4-game winning streak and started a 4-game losing streak. So they're still the lowly Pirates, but realistically, this division's a little weak with these two teams in the bottom. But that's how I have it right now. Number 28. We got the Oakland Athletics, 1-1 against Texas, 1-3 against Houston over the weekend. So it's been pretty fun to watch. Honestly, their offense has been pretty popping, but their pitching has not been super great down the stretch. Kind of where we expect them to be. Not really much to look forward to watching these teams in the bottom row. So we're just going to keep going. 27, Detroit Tigers, 0-3 against Houston, 1-2 against Chicago. White Sox, they're pretty much trying to play spoiler, but it looks like for the most part, the teams that are making shots at the playoffs, just running them over. That seems to be why they're kind of falling a little bit down. And right beside them, we've talked about them a couple weeks in a row, Kansas City 0-3 against Minnesota, 1-2 against Boston. So they had a little bit easier schedule than Detroit. I've been talking about these two teams are basically intertwined for a number of weeks now, 500 against each other. They're basically going like 2-4 each week, or 1-5, these two teams. And Kansas City had a little bit easier schedule, and I think they scored one more win than Detroit. So what does that really say? These two teams are going to be forever kind of intertwined, it seems. We'll see what that's probably not going to break till next year. 25. I think this is one of the biggest climbers over the past couple of weeks. If you look across the whole board, they went 0-2 against Baltimore, so like a Maryland battle. But then they went 2-1 against Miami. So a division rival that they're up against, and they win a series. So I think that's 3 weeks in a row now that Washington has won at least one of the series of the week. And let's not forget, it's been a long climb from the bottom of the rows. Ever since Juan Soto, it's kind of been like, he's gone, but like this team is going to be competitive. Mind you, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. Next season, they're probably not going to be too much further than that either, but it's at least some sort of excitement. 24, I do got the Miami Marlins, 1-2 against Philly, 1-2 against Washington. So they did lose to Washington, but I think I had Washington here, so I'm not ready to take Washington out of the bottom row overall. It's a 3-game series. They only won by 1, so like realistically, a lot of the games were 1-run games between the two of them. So overall, they're both kind of interchangeable. It's going to be exciting to see which one of these two teams take a step forward going next year. Honestly, right now, based on how things are going, my money would be on Washington. Next up, Texas Rangers, 1-1 against Oakland, 1-2 against Tampa. I don't know what else to really say about Texas right now. Their season's over. There's not a whole lot of excitement there for me, really. So I'm just going to go on. 22. Chicago Cubs, 3-0 against the Mets, 1-2 against Colorado. So started the week off sweeping a tough Mets team, which was super exciting. Then they go in and they play up against a team that was right there in the thick of it with them in the power rankings, and they lose the series. Again, not too much going on with these two teams. The same Colorado. They started the week going 1-1 against White Sox. So pretty like mediocre weeks. I'm sure most fans that are, unless you're like a diehard fan of these two teams, are pretty much tuned out for the season, so these weeks don't matter. And honestly, that's pretty much going to be the case for a lot of these teams coming up. Number 20, the LA Angels, 0-3 against Cleveland. They went 2-0 against Seattle. They're technically still playing right now, so they do have the lead in the 5th inning, so they might go for the sweep of Seattle. It's pretty big because Seattle's trying to make that first playoff appearance. They're division rivals, so Angels are still playing tough. And you've seen over the past couple of weeks, even though the Angels have been basically playing 500, they seem to manage to step up to their opponent. Like when they played the Yankees, they stepped up, but then they also stepped down to their opponents when they're playing weaker teams. So it's a really interesting team to watch. They're just playing spoiler down the stretch here for sure. Number 19, San Francisco Giants, 2-1 against Atlanta. 0-2 against the Dodgers. They're playing tonight. They're the Sunday night game, so trying to avoid the sweep. Overall, they had to have been pretty pumped. Big series win against Atlanta, but it's far, far too late for this team. They're not in the playoff race. Pretty much in the top 3 rows here. You're somewhat in the playoff race, maybe not in these next couple. But overall, I do put the Giants number 19. Number 18, we got the Boston Red Sox. 0-2 against the Yankees, 2-1 against Kansas City. Just an average week. I think they're in the exact same spot they were last year, so not a whole lot of difference going on there. Again, last place in the East. This shows a lot of how strong this division is overall. Fortunately for them, they're in last. I think 2 years ago, the pandemic year, they were last as well, and they turned it around the year after. But I don't see that. They got some sort of a rebuild in the works. Their pitching's definitely been a big question mark for them. Next up, Arizona Diamondbacks, 1-2 against the Dodgers, 1-2 against San Diego. So technically that game's still being played 2 right now. San Diego, they are technically winning at 5th inning, so it could be a 3-1. And Diamondbacks, I just think they had that little bit of a streak going for a while that really climbed them up the rankings, and they've continued to play somewhat 500, maybe a little bit less than 500. They definitely struggle with teams that are ahead of them, definitely the top 2 teams. So they managed to beat these teams, pretty much solidifies why they're exactly where they are. Number 16, this is kind of where it starts to get a little bit up. 3-0 against Kansas City, and then they go 1-3 against Cleveland, which is just devastating for them. So they started the week huge, sweeping those Royals, and then the Guardians come into town. Actually, I don't know who was at home, so don't quote me on that. But that was the big series. They needed to win it to keep their playoff hunter alive. Right now, they're 6 games back in the division, and that's pretty much their only path to it. Because I don't think the wild card. I think if you look at it, it's even farther out. It might be 8.5. When you're looking at Twins, that's their only path for them. They do have one more game against Cleveland. I think it's tomorrow. But Twins, they basically avoided the sweep today, barely. Well, not the sweep, the 4-0 that I guess they're playing 5 games. But Twins have a long way to go, and they've been hopped by the Chicago White Sox. I think I even hopped them last week. White Sox went 1-1 against Colorado, 1-0 against Cleveland, and 2-1 against Detroit. They played a series in the middle of the week, not a series, a game against Cleveland in the middle of the week, which was a big win. They're still 3.5 games back from the division, but they have that big series against Cleveland starting next week, so that's what they're going to be looking for. They're going to be looking to make up some ground, but Cleveland's been looking pretty good, so that's probably a highlight series going into next week. Number 14, probably one of the biggest droppers on the week, 2-0 against Washington, 1-2 against Toronto. So even though they beat Washington in the Maryland series, they needed to start making up ground on this wild card. Toronto was the place to do it. They lost another series, so that's back-to-back series losses to Toronto. 4.5 games back from the wild card. Now, technically, it's not too bad. They just need to go on a little bit of a streak here, and they're starting the next week off against Detroit. So it's the perfect kind of opponent to be able to make up some ground while these other 2 teams hopefully start going on a little bit of a losing streak. The one bonus they got, while Toronto seems to be one of the hotter teams in the wild card, Tampa has stumbled a little bit, still playing well, but Seattle is looking to be swept right now by the Angels, which might help it. If the Seattle loses the game they're currently playing, I guess they'll be 4 back. Number 13, I gotta admit, I counted these guys out at one point. 1.5 games back now. 1-1 against St. Louis, 2-1 against the Yankees. I think they're still playing the Yankees. I think I chalked up the Yankees for a win there. Maybe it's over. I can't remember. I was looking at a few of the games. I wasn't watching that one today because football, of course, but they're 1.5 game back from the division or wild card. Division's probably out of sorts, but the wild card is definitely up for grabs. They have the Phillies, they have the Padres that they've managed to close the gap a little bit here. And they got to be excited because they technically have these guys down the stretch, playing them each. They have a weaker division, while the Padres and the Phillies both have quite strong divisions and teams ahead of them that are quite stronger, with the Dodgers and all that. I'll not get too into it. But Milwaukee's on the trajectory up, and I wouldn't be surprised for them to sneak into the playoffs with these, 2.5 weeks left. So keep your eyes on the Brewers. They're hot right now. Number 12. 2-1 against Miami. 0-3 against the Braves. That hurts. Definitely with this, how tight I was just talking about. The wild card is. The one thing they got going for them I meant to mention was that Milwaukee plays the Mets. So that's going to hopefully set them back a little bit. But the Phillies, they need to get it together because they had a little bit of a lead, I guess. But I guess it's never been super big. But it's just been a little bit of a couple losing streaks, it seems, for them as of the past couple of weeks. Have really put their playoffs in contention. But yeah, number 11. We're talking about same story here. 1-1 against Seattle, 2-1 against Arizona. So they were winning game 4. I was already talking about it. They're playing right now. Same story. I think them and the Phillies are tied technically for that wild card spot. So it's going to be tight. These three teams are like interchangeable. It's kind of like the past couple of weeks we were talking about with the American League. It seemed like they were all bunched together. But there seems to start to be some separation, at least from the Orioles, whereas the separation seems to have gotten smaller with the Brewers. Number 10. We have the Cleveland Guardians, 3-0 against the Angels, 3-1 against Minnesota over the weekend. They played a ton of games this weekend because they had that middle game with the White Sox that they lost. So they just played a lot of baseball. 3.5 game lead over the White Sox right now. And it's all going to come down to this series. I think if they can come away with a series win, let alone a series sweep, they're going to be pretty much secured. I like what I see with the Guardians. I think they have the rotation that fits perfectly for that first round of the playoffs, a 3-game series. They're going to be able to compete against anyone. Jose Ramirez, well, he's in the conversation for MVP right now. It's going to be a far stretch, right, with Aaron Judge and everything, but he's in the conversation, and he's carried this team to a potential playoff spot. If we would have said at the beginning of the season this is where they would be, no one would have believed it. I didn't believe it, at least. Someone might have. Number 9. Seattle Mariners, 1-1 against San Diego, 0-2 against the Angels. I don't know what the score is right now. They're playing. They were losing, so I'm assuming maybe 0-3. But ever since I put them in the top row, they've had a little bit of a struggle. It might have been a top row curse, but this wild card is super tight between them and the next two teams. I think it's a big series for them. They have the A's next week. So they're going to start next week off against the Oakland A's. It's a good chance for them to kind of right the ship and get a couple games cushion because they want to keep that cushion on the Orioles. Otherwise, who knows if they're not. You got to stay a little bit hot. Definitely down the stretch here. Number 8, Tampa Bay Rays, 2-3 against Toronto, 2-1 against Texas. They're starting next week off against the Astros, so that's a big series for them. It's kind of like get it ready for playoffs. It's wild card. Every series is going to be kind of playoff time now when you're in this wild card race. And losing that series, that 5-game series to Toronto, was rough. But they were down 3-1, and they managed in Game 5 to smack the Jays up. I think it was 11-0. So at least only lost the 1 game difference. And that was just an intense series all around. So they played them tough. That's why I gave the Jays a little bit of an edge this week. Number 7, 3-2 against Tampa, 2-1 against Baltimore. The Jays have been, while they're not winning like sweep-wise overall, they're winning series and they're consistently kind of playing 600, 650 baseball. At least feels like a month now. Ever since I think I had them at 15 4 weeks ago, something like that. But they've just consistently been winning. And honestly, if you want to get hot and start winning baseball, you want to do it now. And they're getting ready just for the playoffs. I think they're technically in striking distance of the Yankees, 4.5 games or something. But that's going to be a long stretch. I'm sure they play at least one more series against each other. So anything can happen. And if they can do that, getting that bye would be massive for a Blue Jay team like that. Number 6, that's the team we're just talking about. New York Yankees, 2-0 against Boston, 1-2 against Milwaukee. So not a great week. Again, they're just kind of seeing the Yankees fans come out, like, even though they go on some massive winning streak, then they always seem to follow it up with a losing streak, but they managed to break that against Milwaukee today. So, yeah, lucky for them. They've had such a cushion, and I just can't see them falling out of the first round bye right now, so that's kind of why I got them number 6. Overall, every team ahead of them is either in the other side of it or it's the Astros. So I think that's pretty much where we're at right now. Number 5, New York Mets, 0-3 against the Cubs, and 4-0 against Pittsburgh. Just a weird week. I thought about maybe moving them up, but I just couldn't get past the 0-3 against the Cubs to start the week. They really turned it around with the sweep. But the teams ahead of them, well, didn't have amazing weeks. I was more satisfied watching the Braves beat the Phillies. We saw the Cardinals have basically played very good baseball for a little while, and that's why I got the Cardinals number 4. They're 1-1 against Milwaukee, 3-1 against Cincinnati. They've just been super consistent, and that's kind of been the biggest difference between, I find, the Mets and the Cardinals and the Braves, is that the Braves and Cardinals have just like ramped up as the season went on, where it's been more of a downward slope for the Mets a little bit. So kind of like I was talking about with the Jays, as we get closer to playoffs, it's a little worrisome. But at the same time, technically right now they're sitting in the bye spot. They're 1 game up on the Braves. I'm talking about the Mets again. But I do see the Braves switching that, and that's why they're my number 3. 1-2 against San Fran. So they had a kind of rough road trip out west when they went to Oakland, they went to Seattle, they went to all those. Pretty much a 500 road trip. Not great, but they managed to stay 1 game behind the Mets, which I think is huge. With these next 2.5 weeks left of baseball, I suspect they're going to overtake the Mets. That's why I have them. So, and then they swept the Phillies over the weekend, which just cemented it for me for them to stay number 3 over the Cardinals. The Cardinals are threatening for it for sure, because the problem is that the bye is not secure. Technically, like, you could see the Cardinals going on a big enough run here that they steal the bye away, which would be super interesting, because then you would see, I guess, number 3 is probably going to play the Cardinals. It'd be interesting, because I guess that would be, I don't even know. It'd be like a Mets against Phillies. It'd just be wild the way the playoffs are going to work. The top 2 aren't going to change too much. We got the Houston Astros. They went 3-0 against Detroit, 3-1 against Oakland, just smashing up on the bottom teams. Alvarez just had a monster game yesterday, 3 home runs himself. Ever since I dropped the Astros a couple weeks back out of the number 2 spot, they punished me, making me look like a fool for even suggesting that they're not the second best team in the MLB right now. So I'm just going to, these top 2 teams are pretty much the same. I feel like it's going to be like that pretty much down the rest of the stretch. Dodgers, what do I need to say? They just continue to roll. Best run differential. Their offense is intense. When it comes to pitching, I might give the Astros a little bit of an edge. If these 2 teams met in the finals, it'd be interesting to see how that would play. It'd be a very good series. But guys, let me know what you guys think. This is my power rankings with like 2.5 weeks left in the season. Don't forget, smash that like button like we were talking about if you want to see daily videos. Subscribe to the channel. I know there's a lot of you out there, and if you get to the end, like, honestly, you should be subscribing. More videos coming out. NFL's going on. Hockey's about to start. All the fun stuff. We hope to see you guys out there for the next video.